Your antivirus is not protecting you right now. In fact, at this very moment, the software designed to keep hackers out of your computer is the exact door they are walking through. And the scariest part? Microsoft knows about it, they have confirmed it, and there is still no fix. If you are running Windows 10 or Windows 11, this affects you right now, today, even if you just updated your system this morning. Let us talk about what is actually happening, because this is not some vague warning or overblown tech headline. This is a confirmed, documented, publicly exploitable vulnerability sitting wide open on over 1 billion Windows machines worldwide, and the clock is ticking. Like and subscribe, because what you are about to hear is the kind of thing most people will not find out about until it is already too late. The vulnerability is called RoguePlanet. It carries the official tracking code CV202650656, and it was dropped publicly on June 10, 2026, just hours after Microsoft rolled out its largest ever single-month security update. That update, called Patch Tuesday, fixed nearly 200 vulnerabilities at once, but not this one. This one slipped right through, and the researcher who found it made sure the whole world knew about it the same day Microsoft thought they were done patching. To understand why this is so dangerous, you need to understand what the bug actually does. When you think of a hacker gaining control of your PC, you probably imagine someone breaking through your firewall, bypassing your antivirus, cracking your password. But RoguePlanet does something far more alarming. It uses your antivirus against you. Microsoft Defender, the built-in security tool running on virtually every Windows machine by default, operates at the highest privilege level a Windows system has. It runs as something called NT Authority System. That is the top of the chain. No permission barriers, no access limits, full control of everything on the machine. RoguePlanet tricks Defender into handing that power directly to a regular, unprivileged user account, not a hacker with advanced tools, just someone who managed to get basic, limited access to your machine, maybe through a phishing link, a compromised password, or a piece of malware you did not even notice. The technical mechanism behind this attack is something cybersecurity researchers call a talk to race condition. Talk to stands for time of check to time of use. In plain English, it means there is a tiny gap between the moment Defender checks what a file is and the moment it actually acts on it. In that split second, the exploit swoops in and swaps the file out for something malicious. Defender, thinking it is doing its job, then executes that malicious swap with full system-level privileges. The result is a command shell with total administrative control handed directly to the attacker. Like and subscribe, because this is not theory. Multiple independent cybersecurity researchers have tested this and confirmed it works. ThreatLocker, a respected endpoint security firm, reproduced the exploit on fully patched Windows 11 machines running the June 2026 cumulative update, which is the absolute latest update available. They confirmed it works and even published a video proving it. Security researchers at Picus Security independently validated the same findings. The exploit was also tested against Windows 10 systems with the latest patches installed, and the result was the same. No combination of Windows updates currently available closes this hole, and here is the detail that should make your stomach drop. This exploit works whether Microsoft Defender's real-time protection is turned on or off. Disabling your antivirus does not protect you. It actually makes things worse, because then you lose whatever other protections Defender was offering while still remaining vulnerable to the underlying flaw. There is currently no switch you can flip, no setting you can change, and no update you can install that eliminates this threat entirely. The researcher behind this is operating under the name Nightmare Eclipse, also known online as Chaotic Eclipse and Dead Eclipse. What makes this story genuinely different from most cybersecurity news is the context around why these exploits were released at all. This researcher did not just stumble on a bug and release it carelessly. This was deliberate. This was a protest. Starting in early April 2026, Nightmare Eclipse began releasing working exploit code directly to the public. No coordination with Microsoft, no. Waiting for a patch, no warning. The first was called Blue Hammer, released April 3, 2026, with a pointed note directed at Microsoft's Security Response Center that read, in the researchers' own words, that they were not bluffing. Like and subscribe, because the story of how this happened is just as important as the technical details, and most tech channels are not covering both sides. Blue Hammer targeted a race condition in how Defender handles file remediation and allowed a low-privileged user to escalate to full system access. It was assigned the identifier CV202633825, received a CVS severity score of 7.8, and was confirmed exploited in real-world attacks by April 10, 2026, just 7 days after it was published. Microsoft patched Blue Hammer as part of the April 2026 Patch Tuesday cycle, but before that patch even shipped, Nightmare Eclipse had already released 2 more. The second exploit was called Undefend. It did something different and arguably even more insidious than Blue Hammer. Instead of immediately escalating privileges, Undefend targeted Defender's own signature update pipeline and froze it silently. No error messages, no alerts, no warnings to the user or administrator. Windows Defender simply stopped updating its definitions in the background, becoming progressively more blind to new threats while the machine appeared. Completely normal. The third was Redson. This one abused a different Defender mechanism, specifically the way Defender handles files tagged with cloud attributes through the Windows Cloud Files API. When Defender identifies such a file, it tries to restore it to its original location, but Redson manipulates where that location actually points, using entfs junction points and opportunistic locks to redirect Defender's privileged write operation directly into the Windows System 32 folder, overwriting a critical system binary and achieving full system access through a completely separate technique than Blue Hammer used. Security analysts at Vector AI described the combined effect of these 3 exploits as a layered degradation strategy rather than a single one-shot attack. Blue Hammer or Redson gives the attacker system-level control. Undefend then quietly disables Defender's ability to detect or respond to what comes next. The attacker becomes invisible to the very system designed to catch them. Cybersecurity firm Huntress confirmed in mid-April 2026 that all 3 exploits were being used in real attacks in one documented case. An attacker entered a corporate network through a compromised FortiGate VPN account and then used these exploits to escalate from a basic foothold into complete system-level control of the target machine. Huntress observed the attacker manually running commands to enumerate the network, check stored credentials, and map internal systems. Like and subscribe, because what we just described is a real attack on a real organization, not a hypothetical. Microsoft eventually patched Redson and Undefend together in an emergency out-of-band update released May 21, 2026, well outside the normal monthly Patch Tuesday schedule, which tells you how serious the situation was. The U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, known as CISA, added all 3 exploits to its known exploited vulnerabilities catalog, and federal agencies were given a hard deadline to patch. But here is what happened next, and this is where the story takes an even sharper turn. On June 9 and 10, 2026, Microsoft released its June Patch Tuesday, the largest single-month rollout in the company's history, covering nearly 200 vulnerabilities. Buried in those fixes were 2 more Nightmare Eclipse exploits, Green Plasma and Yoloki. Microsoft thought they were staying ahead. They were not. Within hours of that update going live, Nightmare Eclipse released RoguePlanet, a brand new, never-before-seen, fully functional exploit targeting yet another flaw in Microsoft Defender. Working proof of concept code, published the same day the patches dropped, confirming that Microsoft fixed the old flaws while a new one was already waiting. This was the 3rd consecutive month this researcher had dropped a new 0-day on Patch Tuesday itself. RoguePlanet, now officially tracked as CV202650656 with a CVS severity score of 7.8, exploits a talk-to-race condition in the Microsoft Malware Protection Engine, the core scanning component inside Defender that runs continuously in the background on your machine. At a technical level, the exploit opens a virtual ISO disk image containing a file with the ICAR test string, which is a standardized string researchers use to trigger antivirus detections. It then directly invokes internal Defender APIs, including ManageAeropen, MScanStart, and MupCleanStart, to force Defender to scan the file and begin remediation. During that remediation window, while Defender is processing the detected threat, the exploit traces to manipulate the file system using int.fs mount point reparse points and opportunistic file locks to pause Defender's execution at precisely the right moment. It then redirects the target path from the malicious file location into Windows System 32, specifically to a file called wormger.exe. When Defender's remediation resumes, it follows the redirected path and overwrites the real wormger.exe with a copy of the exploit binary itself, running with system privileges. The Windows error reporting scheduled task then triggers wormger.exe by file name unknowingly, executing the exploit code as system, which then opens a named pipe, duplicates the system token, and spawns a full command shell with the highest possible privileges on the machine. Like and subscribe right now, because what you just read describes a complete takeover of a Windows machine from a standard user account with 0 administrator permissions required. Microsoft's response came on June 16, 2026. The company published an official advisory acknowledging Rogue Planet exists, confirming it is real and serious, and stating they are working on a high-quality security update to resolve it. The phrase high quality is notable because it suggests the fix is not simple or fast. There is no timeline given for when the patch will arrive. Analysts expect either an emergency out-of-band update at some point before July or a fix bundled into the July 2026 Patch Tuesday scheduled for July 14th. That same July 14th date has already been flagged by Nightmare Eclipse as the date for their next planned disclosure. The researcher has publicly warned that whatever is coming on July 14th will be significant. Microsoft and the global cybersecurity community are now watching that date with a great deal of concern. The broader dispute between Nightmare Eclipse and Microsoft reveals something deeply uncomfortable about the state of software vulnerability disclosure. When researchers find a flaw, the standard process is called coordinated disclosure. The researcher reports the bug privately to the software maker. Both parties agree on a timeline. The company builds a patch, and then the researcher can publicly explain what they found once users are protected. But that process depends entirely on the software company taking the report seriously, responding in good faith, and delivering a fix within a reasonable time frame. Nightmare Eclipse has publicly stated that this process broke down entirely in their dealings with Microsoft's Security Response Center. According to the researcher, Microsoft was fully aware that a public release was coming, legal proceedings were initiated, and Microsoft still did not act. Microsoft's version of events, published in a May 27th blog post from the Merc, describes the disclosures as uncoordinated and states that releasing proof of concept code for unpatched vulnerabilities is never justifiable. Microsoft also implied that researchers who publish exploit code enabling real-world attacks could face legal consequences. Following that warning, GitHub, which is owned by Microsoft, disabled Nightmare Eclipse's account and removed all their repositories. GitLab followed shortly after. The researcher then moved to a self-hosted Git server outside Microsoft's reach and continued releasing exploits from there. The cybersecurity community responded with significant pushback against Microsoft's legal threat, and Microsoft later clarified that it was not pursuing legal action against legitimate security researchers. But by then, the damage was done in more ways than one. Real attackers had already picked up the publicly released exploit code and deployed it against real organizations. Like and subscribe. Because this is not just a technical story. This is a story about power, accountability, and who actually pays the price when corporate processes fail. Now let us talk about who is at risk right now today and what you can actually do about it. Every single person running Windows 10 or Windows 11 with Microsoft Defender enabled is affected by Rogue Planet. That is a number approaching 500 million active devices by most estimates. the June 2026 cumulative. Update does not fix this flaw. The fact that you updated your machine yesterday does not mean you are safe. The only limitation of the current exploit is that it requires the attacker to already have some access to your machine, even a basic standard user account. This is called local privilege escalation rather than remote code execution, meaning the attacker cannot hit you from across the internet with no initial foothold at all. But in practice, that initial foothold is easier to get than most people realize. A phishing email that tricks you into running a file, a compromised app downloaded from a third-party site, a corporate network with a single stolen VPN credential. Any of those gives an attacker the starting position they need to then deploy Rogue Planet and achieve complete control of your machine. There is also a realistic concern that the exploit could be adapted for remote code execution. In the future, Nightmare Eclipse has publicly noted that the original version of Rogue Planet was built around a remote code execution primitive that exploited how Defender handles files hosted on remote SMB network shares. Microsoft's May 2026 mitigations closed part of that original attack path, forcing the researcher to rebuild the exploit as a local privilege escalation. But the underlying weakness in how Defender processes files has not been fundamentally fixed. It has been patched in specific places while the architectural flaw remains. Like and subscribe, because if that remote code execution path gets reopened or rebuilt, the threat level goes from serious to catastrophic. The mitigations that security professionals are recommending right now break down into a few categories. The most effective protection available is application allow-listing, which means using tools like Windows Defender Application Control or a blocker to enforce strict rules about which applications and code can execute on a machine. ThreatLocker's CEO Danny Jenkins confirmed to Bleeping Computer that organizations using application allow-listing can prevent the exploit from executing, providing an effective layer of protection even without a patch. However, full application allow-listing is complex to deploy, especially in large organizations, and is essentially inaccessible to most regular home users. For everyone else, the immediate practical steps are to enable attack surface reduction. Rules in Microsoft Defender, specifically the rules that block abuse of exploited vulnerable signed drivers and credential stealing from the Windows Local Security Authority. These rules do not patch the underlying race condition, but they add meaningful friction to what an attacker can do after the exploit runs. You should also restrict standard user accounts from being able to mount VAAHDADAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAA work because the current proof of concept relies on that ability as part of its execution chain. Keep a close eye on your Microsoft Defender engine version and update it immediately the moment a patch for CV2026506656 appears. The fix will come through Defender's automatic update mechanism, not through a traditional Windows Update installation, so it is worth checking your malware protection engine version number rather than just assuming your system updates are handling it. Back up your critical data to storage that is not directly connected to your machine, and critically, do not rely solely on Microsoft Defender as your only security layer right now. Behavioral detection tools, endpoint detection and response platforms, and additional anti-malware solutions that do not depend on Defender's scanning engine for their detection logic can provide meaningful coverage during this exposure window. Like and subscribe. Because protecting yourself from Rogue Planet is not about one magic setting, it requires layered defenses, and most people are not running any layers at all. Let us zoom out for a moment because this situation is bigger than one researcher and one company disagreement. What Nightmare Eclipse has exposed over the past 3 months is something the cybersecurity industry has known and quietly worried about for years. Microsoft Defender, the security tool pre-installed and running by default on every modern Windows machine, runs with the absolute highest privileges on the system. That design choice is necessary for it to do its job. But it also means that any vulnerability in Defender is not just a vulnerability in an antivirus product. It is a vulnerability in the highest privilege process on the machine, every flaw in Defender is, by definition, a potential path to complete system compromise. Bluehammer, Redson, Undefend, Green Plasma, Yoloki, Minaplasma, and now Rogue Planet. 7 public zero-day exploits targeting Microsoft Defender released in roughly 10 weeks by a single researcher. Not all from the same code path, not variations on the same theme. Genuinely different architectural weaknesses, each one independently capable of delivering system-level control to an attacker. That pattern does not suggest an isolated coding mistake. It suggests something structural. The way Defender's components interact, the way it handles file operations during remediation, the way it manages timing between checking files and acting on them. These are design-level issues that a patch for 1CV does not fully address. Microsoft has now patched 6 of the 7 disclosures. Rogue Planet remains open, but July 14th is coming, and whatever Nightmare Eclipse has prepared for that date has not yet been seen. The average time for attackers to weaponize a publicly available proof of concept exploit in 2026 has collapsed to approximately 5 days, according to security analysts tracking exploit timelines, with 3 of Nightmare Eclipse's previous exploits already confirmed used in live attacks before patches were available. The risk that Rogue Planet gets operationalized in the next few weeks is considered high by virtually every major cybersecurity firm that has analyzed it. Like and subscribe right now, because we are going to keep covering this story as it develops, and you do not want to miss the update when the July 14th disclosure happens. Here is what you should do before you close this video. Go check your Windows Defender Engine version right now. Open Windows Security, click Virus and Threat Protection, scroll down. 2 Security Intelligence Updates, and look at the version number for the Malware Protection Engine. Write it down. Come back and check it again in the next few weeks, because when the patch for CV202650656 ships, the engine version will change, and that is the update that matters. Do not wait for the patch to be splashed across tech news before you check. Check proactively. Second, if you are a business owner or IT administrator, audit every endpoint for this exposure today. Verify that your malware protection engine is current on every managed device. Verify that you are not running Defender in passive mode anywhere, as passive mode reduces the number of Defender operations the exploit can redirect. Review your VPN and remote access credentials and treat any compromise of those credentials as a critical incident, because a compromised credential plus Rogue Planet equals complete machine takeover. Third, if you are a home user, make sure automatic updates are enabled not just for Windows, but specifically for Windows Defender signatures and platform updates, because these are separate update channels. And a machine that is fully Windows updated can still be running an outdated Defender engine. The story of Nightmare Eclipse and Microsoft is still unfolding. There is a confirmed public exploit sitting on fully patched Windows machines right now with no fix available. There is a researcher who has released 7 working exploits in 10 weeks and has already announced what appears to be an 8th. Scheduled for July 14th, there is a billion-user operating system whose built-in security tool has been turned into the attack surface, and there is a patch that does not yet exist for the most recent flaw. This is not a situation where caution is an overreaction. This is a situation where the people who study this for a living are genuinely concerned, where federal agencies have been given mandatory patching deadlines for the earlier versions of these attacks, and where the proof of concept code is already publicly available for anyone willing to look for it. Like and subscribe, because this channel will be the first place you hear about the July 14th disclosure and the patch when it finally ships. And staying informed right now is the most important security decision you can make. The antivirus protecting your computer has a hole in it. The people who know how to walk through that hole have already published the instructions. Microsoft is working on a fix but has not delivered one yet. The window is open. How wide it stays open and for how long depends on how fast Microsoft moves and what Nightmare Eclipse does next. You now know exactly what is at stake. Make sure the people you care about who use Windows know it too. Before we go any deeper into the history of how this all started, it is worth stepping back and understanding why a zero-day vulnerability in your antivirus software is fundamentally different from most security threats you hear about. Most vulnerabilities you read about in tech news involve an attacker exploiting a weakness in software to do something that software was not designed to do, a bug in a browser that lets malicious code run, a flaw in a web server that exposes database contents. In those cases, the security software sitting on your machine is a separate layer of defense that might catch the attack before it does damage. Rogue Planet is a completely different category of problem. The attacker is not trying to sneak past your antivirus. The attacker is using your antivirus as the weapon. Defender runs as the highest privileged process on the system specifically so it can access every file, every memory region, every protected system path. That privilege is what makes it effective at catching threats. It is also what makes a flaw inside it so catastrophically dangerous. When you trick system into doing something on your behalf, you become system. No other process on the machine can stop you, audit you, or detect you because nothing runs above system. Like and subscribe, because this architectural reality is the thing that makes the entire series of Nightmare Eclipse exploits so significant, and it is the thing that will keep being true even after every current CV gets a patch. The data on how fast attackers move when public exploit code drops is not reassuring. Security researchers tracking exploit timelines in 2026 have documented that the average time between a working proof of concept appearing publicly and that same code appearing in real attack tools has collapsed to approximately 5 days. For 3 of the Nightmare Eclipse exploits, that timeline was even shorter. Bluehammer was in active use within 7 days. Redson and Undefend were observed in real attacks within roughly 6 days of their public release. By that measure, Rogue Planet, which was released on June 10, 2026, has almost certainly already been examined by criminal threat actors and may already be appearing in initial attack toolkits. The fact that Microsoft has not yet confirmed active exploitation of Rogue Planet does not mean exploitation is not happening. For both Bluehammer and Redson, Microsoft was slow to confirm active exploitation that Huntress and other firms had already documented independently. Absence of Microsoft confirmation is not absence of exploitation. Like and subscribe, because following this story closely matters, and the next few weeks are critical. One of the more disturbing technical details about this entire series of exploits is what it reveals about the relationship between patching and security. There is a common assumption among everyday users that keeping Windows updated means being protected. Run your updates, let Defender update its signatures, and you are safe. That assumption has always been somewhat simplified, but the Nightmare Eclipse disclosures have demonstrated it in concrete, documented terms. Microsoft patched Bluehammer in April. The researcher released Redson the same week using a different attack path. Microsoft patched Redson in May with an emergency out-of-band update specifically because the situation was urgent. The researcher released Green Plasma and Yellowkey. Microsoft patched Green Plasma and Yellowkey in its June patch Tuesday, the largest single-month patch release in company history. The researcher released Rogue Planet the same day. At every stage, Microsoft was patching specific instances of a class of vulnerability while the underlying architectural weakness in how Defender manages privileged file operations remained exploitable through a different technique. Patching a specific CV is not the same as fixing the design. The patches are real and important and should be applied immediately, but they are addressing symptoms of a deeper structural issue that has not yet been fully resolved. Like and subscribe, because this distinction between patching a bug and fixing a design is the most important cybersecurity concept you can take away from this entire story. For individuals and organizations trying to navigate this period before a patch exists, the security community has been clear about what actually reduces risk right now. Application control tools that enforce strict allow listing of trusted applications prevent the exploit binary from executing even if an attacker manages to place it on the machine. Behavioral monitoring tools that flag unusual File operations in trusted Windows directories, particularly movements into System 32 or unexpected execution of scheduled tasks like the Windows Error Reporting Queue, a reporting task that Rogue Planet abuses, can catch exploitation attempts in progress. Credential hygiene is essential because the most realistic real-world attack chain starts with a stolen credential, giving an attacker that initial foothold, and Rogue Planet converts that foothold into total machine control. Network segmentation limits how far an attacker can move laterally even after achieving system on one machine, and backup practices that maintain clean copies of critical data on storage not directly accessible from the compromised machine are the last line of defense if everything else fails. None of these eliminate the vulnerability. The only thing that eliminates the vulnerability is a patch, and that patch does not exist yet, but layered defenses reduce the probability that the vulnerability gets exploited successfully and reduce the impact if it does. Like and subscribe because we are going to keep watching this situation, and we will tell you the moment that patch ships, the July 14th. Date hanging over all of this is not a small footnote. Nightmare Eclipse has publicly signaled in terms that the cybersecurity community has taken seriously that July 14th, which is the date of the next Microsoft Patch Tuesday, will bring another significant disclosure. The researcher has previously described it as something that will make sure your bones ache, which is dramatic language but also consistent with a pattern of escalating releases over the past 3 months. Security teams at major firms are already preparing for that date. Microsoft's security response teams are presumably doing the same. Whether the July 14th release involves a new exploit, a new class of vulnerability, or something targeting a component outside of Defender entirely is unknown. What is known is that 3 previous Patch Tuesdays have each been met with a new zero-day release within hours, and there is no reason based on current information to believe July 14th will be different. You need to be aware of that date, check your systems after it passes, and follow credible security sources that will report what happens immediately. This channel will be one of them. Like and subscribe so you are ready. What makes this moment in cybersecurity history meaningful beyond the technical details is the question. It forces about accountability. A researcher found serious vulnerabilities in software used by more than 1 billion people. The standard process for handling that situation broke down. Real attackers exploited the resulting public disclosures and compromised real organizations. Microsoft issued legal threats. Platforms removed the researcher's accounts. The researcher continued releasing exploits from independent infrastructure. Federal agencies were given mandatory patching, deadlines, and the underlying architectural weaknesses that enabled all of these exploits in the first place have not been fundamentally redesigned. Every party in this story made decisions with real consequences for real people who had nothing to do with the dispute between a researcher and a corporation. The home user in Ohio running Windows 11 on a laptop did not choose a side in a vulnerability disclosure argument. The small business in Manchester running Windows 10 on their point-of-sale terminal did not decide that coordinated disclosure was the appropriate process. They were affected by decisions made by others, as they always are in cybersecurity, and they deserve to understand what happened and what it means for them. That is what this video has tried to give you. Like and subscribe because staying informed is the only lever individual users and small organizations actually have in situations like this, and this channel exists to make sure you can pull it. Rogue Planet is unpatched. CV202650656 is open. Your Windows machine is affected. A fix is coming but has no confirmed date. July 14th is 3 weeks away. The exploit code is public, and the people who want to use it for criminal purposes have already seen it. Now, you have seen it too. What you do with that information is up to you. Check your systems. Tell the people around you. Stay current on the patch release and come back here when the next update drops, because this story is not over. The vulnerability exists right now. The fix does not. But the gap between those two facts is not empty. It is filled with people making decisions, and the quality of those decisions determines who gets hurt and who does not. Microsoft is deciding how fast to build and ship the patch. Criminal threat actors are deciding whether the current exploit code is reliable enough to fold into their attack toolkits. Enterprise IT teams are deciding whether to implement application control mitigations today or wait for the official fix. Home users are deciding whether to take this seriously or assume it will not affect them. Every one of those decisions has consequences. The only way the people at the edge of that chain get any protection at all is if they are informed. Like and subscribe, because that is exactly what this channel is here for, and this story is far from over.